Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
Welcome to our instantly after the episode reaction to The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5, Feel Her Love. Is it? With the sickle through the belly.
Yeah.
This is going to be a spoiler-heavy discussion of The Last of Us. If you have not watched the show, bookmark us, come back, all that kind of stuff. But if you have watched the show, something that you need to know is I've played half of the second game. So I'm going off of some gameplay watches. So there's going to be some stuff that I'm probably going to talk about that I don't have as full knowledge as I had in like the first game. We're to the point now where the show is beyond where I was in the game. So I'm going to be like, I think this is how it is, which is very different than what kind of previously how we were kind of doing. I had a lot more knowledge, a lot more information.
Right. Although you've been watching the walkthroughs or the
movie version.
Yeah.
But like last week with the record store, I talked about how the scene itself in the record store was exactly pretty much how it was in the game, but everything around it wasn't necessarily what the game was. Well, I didn't play that side quest. So I knew of that scene, but I didn't know the side quest of going through that record store. So I said that was slightly different, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it wasn't necessarily right either.
Okay.
We are now to a point in day 2 in Seattle where I have general ideas of how the story is going. There's some big beats that I know are going to happen. One of those happened in this episode.
Right.
But we're going to talk about some of the other stuff that's going on. Overall thoughts about this episode?
I mean, it was fine. It was, I don't know. I was going to say it was slower, but no, it wasn't. Because there was some stuff that happened, but it was all, I don't know how to explain that, because it was slower, but then there was some, like, the scarred, what are they called?
The Seraphites.
The Seraphites. Torturing, killing, whatever.
Yeah.
One of the WLF people, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then them in the... Like, why did we think this was a good idea to go into this building? Obviously, the WLF isn't patrolling that building. So I said to him, I'm like, it's full of infected.
Yeah.
That's why they're not patrolling there.
Yeah.
But no, they went in anyway. And it was full of infected.
Stalkers. They're called stalkers. And they're smart infected. And I
like... that was creepy.
And I like that... Ellie's dealt with them before, and she went to the council at Jackson and said, I came across a smart one, and they all went, they can't be smart. Said every government ever, and then until they got destroyed by bugs from across the universe. Wait, that's a different thing.
Would you like to know more?
Or what's it going with that? Oh, but she knew how to handle them more than Dina did. Which Dina's been like the smart one. She spent a whole time figuring out the map. It's a stupid little thing for me, but the map is such a big deal for me about Dina being the educated one, but also the intellectually, like, not smarter than Ellie, but Ellie's very smart. But she's much more rational in her thinking process.
Well, so the difference between the two is Dina is book smart. Right.
Right.
I mean, she knows how to shoot, and they went out on missions together and all of that. So it's not like she doesn't know how to do all that stuff, but she has had much more limited interactions with the infected and just and the other human beings that are just horrible. Right. She's had a little bit of interaction with that. She kind of alluded to that a little bit.
With the story about her mom and the raider and stuff like that.
But then she ends up in Jackson, and that's kind of, from how she made it sound, where she has grown up and been ever since. And so she's almost kind of enclosed or kept away from a lot of that stuff. She hasn't had the experiences that Ellie has. Ellie isn't necessarily book smart because she didn't really care about school.
Right.
But she is very, very much more street smart.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the two of them together, it works well until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't. So I want to talk about Ellie and Dina for a moment, and there, Dina saying that's one of the reasons why I love you, and Ellie kind of being the whole, you love me? And then she goes to say it, and Ellie says, you don't have to tell me, I know.
Dina says,
Or Dina,
yeah.
Dina says it back. And so I like that they have that confirmation. Like, it wasn't just a hookup.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a hookup in the last episode. There's actual feelings there.
Yeah.
Which is going to be important because now Jesse's back in the picture.
Right.
And that was the beat that I knew was coming at some point, is that Jesse's the one who comes in and it saves them from a horde in the game. But here he saves them from the stalkers. But him and Tommy both being in Seattle is a big part of where we go forward in the game too, because Tommy ends up being on his own kind of mission, kind of like what Ellie is doing in this. But Dina and Ellie having a moment before they get to the big building of when they find the Seraphites that are all killed underneath the mural.
Yeah.
Ellie's like, "Why are we here? You're pregnant. What? Let's go back."
Yeah.
And that's when Dina tells the story about getting out of the house and the raiders showing up and beating her mom and her sister in front of her, and then she killing him, and her telling Ellie, "I would have spent eternity trying to track him down if he had gotten away."
Yeah.
And it's negative reinforcement for this idea that Ellie doesn't necessarily need to hear. She needs someone to be rational, and that rational person has been Dina. And now Dina, who now is being like, "No, we're going to do this."
Yeah.
And that's
but Dina is upset about it too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't witness it like Ellie did, which is a whole nother level
right.
of, vengeance or whatever. But she loved Joel like a dad, and so she wants vengeance too. So it's kind of like, one person really wants it and the other person sort of kind of wants it. And so it's like there's nobody there. I think Jesse is going to be the one.
When Jesse finds out that Dina is pregnant, he's going to be
But he was already before, when he was like, "We're going to go back to the theater, we're going to grab your stuff and we're going home."
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we're not.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he is kind of the one. I don't know if they're going to tell him.
I know what happens, so I'm not going to say.
Okay.
I want to actually tell the internet that I really appreciate for the game players not talking about what happens in the second game, because like I was saying earlier, I didn't play the second half of the game, but I know all the major beats that happens in Seattle, and especially with the Seraphites. Not that they do anything special, but there's a scene that happens later on with the Seraphites that's very integral to why I enjoy the story overall.
Oh.
And so, but the idea that having Jesse there, have Tommy in Seattle, brings a level of. If you've been around for some of our reviews, we've been getting our ass kicked by technology. What I was saying was that Jesse and Tommy bring a level of pause and calm to both of Dina and Ellie's kind of blinded rage of going forward, and will be the
potentially
could be the voice of reason to say, okay, listen, we need to take Dina back.
Yes, and I think that Ellie, she already told Dina that she needed to go back. I don't think that's something that Ellie doesn't isn't ready to hear.
Yeah. 100%.
But I mean, as we saw at the end, she is not. We've known this about her, right? She's not going to shy away from doing the icky things that you know she feels needs to be done. I mean, I can't. You know, I'm sure this is what Craig Mazin and
Neil Druckmann.
Neil Druckmann want is you to feel conflicted.
Yeah, 100%.
That, you know, you're like, I get it, but it's also a cycle.
Yep.
And, you know, you kill them and then they kill you and then you kill them and then they kill you. You know, it's payback.
Yep.
So,
I mean, how many wars in the history of our planet has been that?
right, you did this horrible thing to
And so
my
we're gonna-
family or
yeah.
my king or my whatever, and
Yep.
now I'm going to go do this horrible thing to
Now
you.
I'm going
and
to
then-
march to Jerusalem with an army of 100,000 people
Yeah.
to free the Holy Land because your Holy Land happens to be the same address as my Holy Land.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so that kind of conversation is Neil has talked about when they did the second game that they really wanted to challenge the game player, and that's why he doesn't care about the negative reviews. He got exactly what he wanted, which was everybody to question why Ellie, why Abby, why Joel, why all of these people made these decisions and how they kept the cycle of violence continuing on.
Yeah.
He wasn't cared about getting 10 stars from IGN.
Right.
He doesn't care about that.
Right.
He'd rather have the player engage in a conversation about why those decisions were
right.
made.
And I think that the big thing is just and I think it started with Abby, that there is justice and then there is brutality.
Yeah.
There is, you know, we as a species have tried to evolve, you know, we still, at least in the US, put people to death in some states for, you know, capital horrendous crimes,
Yeah.
you know, horrendous murders, but they try to do it humanely.
Yeah.
I mean, the person isn't supposed, I know it doesn't always happen, but the person isn't supposed to suffer. And Abby just, I mean, that was just horrible.
Yeah, what she did to Nora,
She didn't
yeah.
just put a gun to his head and execute him. She tortured him and she made Ellie watch. And so I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
And so now she has.
You've triggered something primal in an already violent
Yes,
person.
and that's yeah.
And
She
that's
triggered Ellie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so now Ellie's going to do the same thing, which she did to
Nora.
Which was a mercy ultimately. I mean, I think I would have just been like, fine, I'll just leave you here. And you can be like these guys and just live here forever.
Yeah.
Breathing out spores.
Or you can tell me.
You can tell me and I can.
That's
shoot
what I
you.
would have said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would
Yeah.
have said too.
Let's talk about the spores. The spores is the essence of both games. That's how the infection got spread. And when they made the decision not to have spores in the first season, a lot of people butted up against that for some actually really reasonable reasons. They thought that was taking away from the game just too much. The decision to do it to not have your main cast covered in a mask
Yeah.
60% of the time
Yeah.
is
And
the right decision.
Sound.
Yeah.
And like, how do you hear what people are saying? It's just.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was 100%. That's one of the things that they've been talking about is the dynamic of gameplay and the dynamic of showing it on TV are two different things. So
Yeah.
you have to approach certain things in a much different light than you would in another.
Yeah.
And the spores is one of them.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that they took that time to explain all that because I think the cordyceps is creepier in a different way because you don't know that the roots are infected with the cordyceps like they were in the pipe in Jackson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So but the spores, you can be infected just by walking into a room and breathing.
Yeah.
And so it's a different level of like kind of freak out.
I think logistically, and maybe we've learned this from COVID, because the first one came out before COVID, right? I don't know if the second one did.
The second one came out like right
around COVID.
Right around at COVID. But they had been working on it for a few years.
I think the thing that we have learned is that something that's spread in the air, we're dead.
Yeah.
Like if they can't, and especially in this instance where it spreads super quickly, nobody ever had a chance to come up with any kind of vaccine or anything.
Yep.
The planet's just dead. We're dead. We're gone. So game over.
Right.
We have 2 episodes and we're done.
Yeah.
So I mean, just logistically, it doesn't make sense. And I am unsure as to how this is gonna work. Although they did kind of talk about we watched the after show, and they said in specific locations, in specific instances,
I was gonna bring that up.
That these
fungus.
Yeah, the spores are airborne. So that'll be that kind of helps narrow it down to it's not just everywhere and everybody's dead.
Sub basement too at the hospital is where they found it.
Yeah, if more. They have a whole bunch of people all together being taken over.
Moisture based.
Maybe
it's all dark. I mean, that's how mushrooms grow, right?
Yeah.
That's how fungus grows. It's in dark, cool, damp places.
Right.
That is the definition of Seattle.
Right.
So it makes more sense that it would be even more in a sub basement next to the ocean kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I like that they addressed it at the beginning where Lieutenant Park or whatever her name was sent a team down to do a routine sweep, and they came across the sub level, and that her son was the one who was the leader of the team, and he said seal him in, and she did.
Yep.
Which is she chose everyone else over a loved one, which is the opposite of what Joel did.
Right.
Saving Ellie and damning everyone else.
Right.
Supposedly, they have tried to say that the only way to get the sample from Ellie was to take her brain out because it was wrapped around her brainstem, and so they would have had to have killed Ellie to have a chance of possibly finding a cure.
Right.
And that's where I'm like, okay, they would have killed Ellie and without a certainty of being able to find it.
Right.
This was
Maybe.
I am certain I have to seal my son in because it's in the air. And so she makes the hard decision for everyone else. And now we have this hanging thing out there wherever else they end up going. I still think that Game 3 is coming. I still think the season 4 and 5 based around Game 3 is coming. But for the essence of this show, they've dealt with the idea of the spores being in the air, and where we go forward in the story, I don't think it's going to be a thing that's brought up again or be a major beat, but it's going to be in all of our heads in the back of our heads when they go into a new building now. Whenever they go into a place that they haven't been before, you're going to be questioning, oh my God, is Tommy going to walk into a bunch of spores?
Right.
Or is Dina going to walk into a bunch of spores?
Or does everybody just move to the desert where it's dry and they don't have to worry about it?
One of the things I talked about when A Quiet Place came out is we got one family in the Appalachians. It seemed like back east.
Yeah.
And we got to deal with that one family dealing with the alien invasion. The second one, we got a little bit more world building with the different groups and different things and a bunch of people on an island and all that kind of stuff. The third one, we went back to Invasion Day. I want a Last of Us HBO series of the different towns trying to exist. I want that here with The Last of Us. I want, how does Arizona exist where it's dry and very little water? How does it affect everybody here?
Yeah.
How does it affect everybody in Central Asia where there's not a ton of people around and they eat rice and not wheat? Like what about Africa and the African plains again where they eat a lot of,
or in like the jungle in like Brazil or whatever, where it's just complete jungle, like it's just everything there fungus now.
Give us an anthology series where you're dealing with all the different parts, or just give us an anthology book where each chapter is talking about the different, like, first person accounts from everything happening across the world, because they made a point of the flower plant in Indonesia where it's moist and hot, and it was able to, and it was affected by climate change and stuff. So with this idea now that the spores are there and you're going to walk through a building, there's a possibility that it's not going to happen, but there's a possibility that somebody's going to die because of the spores, and it's going to be in the back of our heads.
Yeah.
And I like that introduction. Nora going out like a boss and not giving up Abby.
Yeah. Well, we didn't see it.
Right.
She didn't die.
Right.
You just see Ellie beating her, basically, like Abby beat.
Yeah.
And
how Joel beat the guy, when the episode with David and the cannibals. Ellie didn't see that, but Joel had done that to somebody too.
So I mean, maybe she did just leave her down there all broken and infected.
Yeah. In that exchange, though, Nora tells her he came in, shot the one person who could do anything, and Ellie says, "I know."
Yep.
And in the creepiest red lighting, psycho killer look on their face, I've known that they've had that conversation because of gameplay.
Yeah.
And that they've worked that, not necessarily maybe worked that out, but they've come to terms with it. Ellie's Ellie, Joel's Joel.
Yeah.
They still love each other. They're working on their relationship. They were trying before everything happened.
I mean, I took it as a non-game player that, of course, she knew. Like, she knew the minute he said the finale of the first season. When he said, that he didn't have anything else to tell her or whatever. That was it. And she looked at him and she took a long time to say, okay.
Yeah.
That she knew. She knew he was lying to her.
Yeah.
So, but from the preview of the next episode, it looks like we're going to have a flashback episode. So maybe if it did actually come up and they did discuss it, maybe they'll discuss it there.
Part of what they're showing in the preview for next week is the trip they take to Cheyenne and to do recon, and it's a year into their time in Jackson, I believe, and they find a science museum, and they get to see space, an Apollo capsule and spacesuits and stuff like that, and that's a part of the side mission that you do in the second game, where you get to spend some time with the two of them actually being happy, and Ellie gets to geek out over being an astronaut and stuff like that. And they showed that stuff in the trailer, and so like it's okay that I feel okay talking about it, especially since they showed it in the trailer for the season and they showed it for the trailer for next week.
Yep.
But I'm wondering how. I know what was that Pedro Pascal would be coming back.
Yeah.
He wasn't gone.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see how non-game players who are just following the show, who aren't in the know of anything, I wonder
Right.
how they feel about Pedro coming back for this episode.
Right.
Is it therapeutic? Is it narcissistic? Is it like how they
Rip our hearts out over and over again.
I said after the episode, we're gonna after the trailer happened, we're gonna get openly weep again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it looked like we get to see them in happier times at the beginning of Jackson, and then we kind of get to see some of the
fallout.
the breakup.
And part of that too is Ellie being a teenager too,
Yeah,
and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And what Joel did and why he did it. I want that conversation. I want to see that conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested about, because they do it in a point in the game that is not what is being presented. It's like the timing of it isn't like the timing's very different.
Yeah.
And so it's much more impactful in the game, but I think it's going to be impactful because it's going to be presented differently.
Yeah, and it's giving you a hey, don't forget.
Yeah.
This was Joel. This was their relationship. This is how she felt about him. This is how he felt about her. When you're watching her do all of these horrible things.
Yep. This was episode started off as saying day 2 in Seattle.
Yep.
I talked about last week about how you do the gameplay itself. Once you get to Seattle, you do 2 days as Ellie and Dina, and you have this mission across Seattle to find Nora, to find everybody as you to get yourself to Abby. And then the gameplay switches and you start playing as Abby,
Right.
and you go back to day 1.
Right.
So I talked about that last week. So I thought that they were going to set that all up in the last 2 episodes. Do day 1 Ellie, day 1 Abby, day 2 Ellie, day 2 Ellie. But we only have 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
So I think what they're going to do
Is next season.
is to start of next season, day 1 with Abby.
Yeah.
And we're going to get 2 episodes or 3 episodes with Abby. And then I think next season is going to be 8 or more episodes. This season's only 7. But next season I think is going to be 8 or more episodes, because you have to spend time with Abby. You have to question why we are playing as Abby. And you have to get through that part before we can get to what happens after all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that I find that very interesting, if that's the storytelling, because I want everybody to have a hissy fit that Abby didn't get hers. She didn't get her comeuppance for a year. Like, we're going to hear everybody on the internet talking about how Abby didn't get what she deserved for a year. And that's going to be the fun conversation, because that's exactly what Neil and Craig want you to be happy. Why? There's going to be all these think pieces about why Abby didn't get hers.
Yeah.
And why Abby's in the right, and why Ellie is in the right, and why Ellie is wrong, and all this other stuff.
That's all they want, is for you to talk about it.
Yep. That I think is really good. Anything else, Jesse? We talked about Jesse. The triangle now that's going to be going on, the love triangle that's going to be going on now with Jesse and Ellie and Dina.
Maybe.
They already talked about it. Ellie already feels a little upset that they lost to the clickers, and Jesse had to be the one that saved them.
Yeah. But she was mature about it, like, because he pointed it out to her, and she was like, "Yeah, we were fine," and he was like, "Okay, until we weren't."
Yeah.
I mean,
appreciated that beat.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the Seraphites for a minute. That scene with the Seraphites, with them openly killing somebody on screen, is confirmation of the television station from the previous episode.
Right. We know they definitely did that.
They definitely did that. There's definitely a turf war, something war going on between the who are being presented currently as the religious zealots, Seraphites, and the militaristic oligarchy that is the Wolves.
Yeah, and this is kind of another instance of, you saw the Seraphites piled up against the wall, and they were all shot. And Ellie and Dina were like, that's horrible. But then the Seraphites are gutting people alive.
Yeah.
And that's like, you're not just shooting people, you are torturing them. So that's like ramping up. It's kind of the same thing that was going on with Abby and Ellie.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that they talked about in the post show was this is a visual representation for Dina and Abby to see that these two sides are just going at each other because, as they were talking about with Isaac last week, you started it and then we did it. Like, I'm not going to have that conversation.
Right.
Just like
you did this and we did this and you did this
and
we did this.
And at some point in time, as the doctor would say, some point in time, you all have to stop going after each other and talk like you should have done from the beginning.
Right.
And this game and this show is only representing what happens if you don't talk. They do not have that let's sit down and have a talk conversation.
Right. Yep.
But they're going to reiterate it every time they get the chance. That is our episode this week. Technology kicking our tail again. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments down below. Please be very nice. That is a requirement around here. If you're on the Spotify side, follow us here. Share with your friends. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, the bell for notifications. We're doing movie reviews and trailer reactions and stuff like that on YouTube. And we're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff around there. It'll be on the YouTube side and on all of our social media stuff for Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. And then I am writing for the Geekerary. I'll be doing articles for them for San Diego Comic-Con. So follow all of that stuff for all your San Diego Comic-Con news, even though we're still 2 months out. I need a plane ticket now. So I've got a tip pass. I got a hotel. So let us know. That flights are easy. I'll walk. Until next time, cult members. Good. They do it in the show. Afternoon, good evening, and good night now.